Hey everyone, welcome to the Raptors Weekly Podcast. In place of Zarar, I'm Blake Murphy coming at you, joined by William Liu. It's the Raptors Weekly Extra crew on a Monday, but Zarar dropped that excellent draft recap podcast in place of the Raptors Weekly Extra late Thursday, early Friday. So we're taking this off his hands. Will, what's going on, buddy?
What's going on? We're all just reeling from the draft, kind of.
Yeah, so reeling. We were all just put back on our heels by the most obvious pick on the board going when the Raptors drafted at number 9.
We wanted, you know what? The draft is about hope, and that's when you take the unsexy pick. It's not that exciting, but the more you think about it, it's I think the Raptors 2 draft guys are okay. They're okay. I mean, it reflects the strategy, but we will talk about that on this podcast. We will break down in depth the Austrian Jakob Poeltl, which I've seen many spellings of his name on the internet. I'm not quite sure which. Yeah, there's like one with an E or without an E.
Oh, like for his last name?
Yeah.
Poeltl.
Okay. I thought that was like the American.
It might be, but that's what was on his jersey. So.
Okay, fair. And then the New Mexico State power forward born in the Cameroon. Siakam's razor. Pascal Siakam. So yeah, we'll talk about both of those guys.
We will also talk about Kevin Durant coming to the Toronto Raptors in free agency, and we'll tee up free agency a little bit because that opens at 12:01 on July 1st, totally killing my long weekend. But it's probably going to be quiet for the Raptors, but we'll talk about it a little bit too. All that. And we don't have an interlude thing here, so let's just get right into it, Will. You mentioned unsexy. That's kind of the word of the day from the draft. Not that, Jakob Poeltl is not an unattractive man or anything like that, but the pick itself, it didn't seem like a very Masai Ujiri thing to take the floor guy on the board. You mentioned hope, and that's kind of what you want to dream on draft night, especially when you have this free lottery pick coming off a 56-win season. Slotting a guy into the rotation is hardly as exciting as taking a swing at a guy who can maybe move the needle in a meaningful way long term. The impression that I got coming out of the introduction of Yak, as he likes to go with as a nickname, the impression that I got coming out of Friday's media session was that the Raptors don't see this necessarily as just a floor pick, though. They really like his ceiling. They're really high on what he could become a couple years down the line. They continually hammered home that, big men peak later, and if you look at where Jonas Valanciunas is at age 24 compared to where he was at age 20, you look at where Poeltl is now compared to where he was 2 years ago or where he could be a couple years down the line, they had him high on their boards. They are very, very high on him. So as much as everyone kind of shrugged and it kind of sucked in the moment to not pick someone who's all upside and all boom or bust, the organization feels differently. They don't think this is a floor pick. They think Yak was not only the best pick available for them at number 9, but they thought they were lucky that he was still there.
And you know what? Honestly, the mock drafts and everything, backed up that sort of prevailing thought. Draft Express had him projected in the 5 to 10 range.
Nobody had him ranked lower than 15. So it's everyone had those top 8 guys mocked to go in some order in the top 8. But when everyone was ranking in terms of player quality, there was no voice that thought he wasn't going to be a good NBA player.
Yeah, and I think that's the right way to assess it. I think as much as the organization doesn't want to spin it as a floor pick, which literally nobody would like to be called that. But the truth is that the floor is pretty high with someone like Poeltl.
Yeah, if he's not at least a decent backup center, I think most people would be pretty surprised. He has so much good size, so much good mobility. His defensive instincts are already pretty strong, and his footwork on the dive after setting screens is like there's enough there already. He's not, I'm not going to use the term NBA ready because that term needs to be buried. There's hardly such a thing, especially when you're looking at a 56-win team and adding a guy to the rotation. But, it's very unlikely that he becomes a bust. I think the analytics suggested that nobody has a lower bust potential And then the Raptors don't feel like there's any chance he's not a productive player for them for the next couple years.
I agree. And look, maybe NBA ready in terms of game is hard to say because it's too big of a jump to go from college to the NBA for most players to expect that. But he does have NBA ready size. He's 7'1", 240 pounds. This is, and obviously, like you said, he does have a lot of skills. He is more mobile than he looks. I think that's one of the biggest things about him.
Are you saying that people maybe saw a 7'1" white center and just assumed things about him based on that? Nobody would do that, right?
Yeah, that tends to happen.
Oh, he's Zeller. But, he's a Zeller. He looks like he could be a Zeller cousin, so he must play like a Zeller.
He's either a Zeller or a Plumlee.
I liked he threw out Pau Gasol for himself. Which
Come
is,
on.
he said that, he was trying to explain that, he doesn't like player comps and, he doesn't really see himself as anyone, but it was a name he threw out there, and, that's kind of fun just because, he's not gonna have the offensive career of Pau Gasol, obviously, but he does have some pretty nice ball skills to the point that Dwayne Casey's talked about him potentially even playing the power forward. I don't think that's ever gonna happen. I think there's just too much size there, and you want a guy like that playing center anyway. But he does have some good ball skills. He can work from the high post. He doesn't have a lot of shooting range, but he has some nice face-up moves from the high post, and he can pass a little bit. He's not an unskilled guy.
No, yeah, definitely not. Look, the guy had a 31 PER in college, right? And you look at things like he shot 64% from the field, and yeah, he had a size advantage, but at the same time, that's a reflection of him being able to finish effectively with both hands around the basket. Works well as a dive man, like you said. He has some moves where he can face up in the mid post and drive to the hoop. The lack of jumper is going to be a concern, and I think that's where my biggest problem with the pick is just that the upside is going forward is a little bit limited so long as he and Jonas are both on the roster, because realistically speaking, I don't think they can play together, but we can talk about that in a second. But yeah, realistically, I don't think they can play together. So his ceiling right now is sort of as an effective backup for Jonas, which has a couple of things. It probably means Bismack is gone, and it means, I guess, Bebe still not trusted. But.
I don't know about the Bebe part. I think, if unless they land another center, and look, I think I talked a lot about before the draft about how it might make sense with that pick to just take the guy that you feel is the best player or has the highest value and the most consensus, because Poeltl's still a trade chip. As much as the organization's high on him and they're pumping his tires and we're doing the scouting report and stuff, if something comes up this offseason and a team wants him in a deal and the Raptors can improve in a meaningful way, he'll be in a deal then. And it's the same for Lucas Nogueira. I think if the big man rotation stayed exactly how it is now on paper, those two would kind of be competing for the backup center role, and Nogueira would actually have the inside track. Just because he has played NBA minutes before, he's played Spanish ACB minutes. He's a little older and further along, and he's shown very little in terms of consistency or reliability, and that's obviously one of the bigger question marks facing Toronto this offseason. But also, you're talking about a 20-year-old center versus a 23-year-old center, and those are pretty meaningful development years. So, but yeah, longer term, I get what you're saying. But again, it's tough because you don't want to take a pick there to pencil into a hole that might not be there, or something that maybe handcuffs you because you made this pick to fill out a roster a certain way. Me, I'm always of the take the best talent, the guy you think has the best value, because from an asset management standpoint, I'd rather have that surplus player who's too good for a backup center role than someone who is you're stretching yourself too thin by playing that person, say, as a backup four.
Yeah, no, and for sure, look, being a 7-footer is a great way to store your value.
Yeah. I should have done that.
There's not...
Should have been 7 feet.
Yeah, you missed a boat by 13
By the way,
inches.
Dan told me was not interested in my pitch that I be on the Summer League roster.
Did you tell them that you could be Aaron Craft 2.0?
I told them that I am a scrappy defender who needs to work his way back into shape by the time Vegas rolls around, but they weren't having it.
Everyone's looking for unathletic scrappy
with
defenders.
no wingspan.
Yeah, seriously, you're actually Aaron Craft.
I'm 5'10". I think maybe I have a 5'11" wingspan. Maybe.
By the way, how'd your team do at the RR tournament?
We were very hungover. I barely slept. We went 1-2 in the round robin, and then in the knockout stage, we actually tied. And the tiebreak procedure was flip a coin and then shoot for it, and we lost through that, which kind of sucked. But we were all pretty gassed at that point anyway. It was a lot of fun though.
Oh, cool.
Yeah.
All right.
I want to do more of them, or maybe like a bigger outdoor one next summer. I think based on interest, if we could do it downtown, we could push it to 32 teams.
30?
I think so.
Wow.
We had 16 this year, and like every year there's been 16 with like 4 or 5 teams that are like him and hawing about it. And a lot of people have told me before that like if it were downtown instead of in Scarborough, it would be, it's a lot easier to mobilize people, especially on like a weekend morning. So we'll see. I got big plans for it next year. Hopefully the Raptors don't make a deep playoff run so I can plan it out a little longer. If the Raptors get knocked out in the first round, then this tournament would be way better. Which I'm sure everyone's on board with.
Definitely, man. You got to have priorities in this game. Going back to Poeltl,
we're just talking about 3-on-3 tournaments now.
Okay, so you want to discuss his weaknesses? Like, what do you expect? Okay, you know what? What do you expect from Poeltl in this first year?
I think if he carves out the role as the team's primary backup center, that's a win in his rookie season. And I know that sounds weird for a number 9 pick, but the reality is that the Raptors they won 56 games, and Jonas Valanciunas is ready for an even bigger role than he had last year. And Lucas Nogueira's, he has a little bit more experience. So I do think too, and I get asked about Nogueira a lot because if he's not ready for the backup role this year, what is he? He's still a few years away from where big men typically hit their stride. But yeah, I think if something pops up this summer and they could upgrade the center rotation, I think they would do that. I just don't think it's a priority anymore. But if Poeltl ends up giving you like 10 minutes a game by the end of the year and like he's not a liability at either end and he's showing that some of his, perimeter mobility and some of his ball skills and touch around the rim are translating, that's going to be pretty encouraging. And I know that, like, look, especially right after the draft, it kind of feels not great to be like, yeah, well, like, if this number 9 pick can carve out this tiny role, but that's kind of the reality, especially in this draft, which isn't all that great a draft and, doesn't have a ton of NBA-ready talent. What about you? Am I setting the bar too low for him, do you think?
No, I agree. I think almost entirely. I think his short-term ceiling is as the full-time backup.
Yeah, you were asking about just this season, right? Because long-term, obviously, he's got a much higher ceiling than that.
Yeah, long-term, I think he could be a starting center in this league. But yeah, in the short term, because the Raptors are good, because the Raptors have Jonas, like you said, who's waiting to step into a bigger role, like I think 10 to 15 minutes and 10 to 15 good minutes would be a win for both the Raptors and for Poeltl, because that would free up assets later, so you wouldn't have to commit money to re-signing Bismack, which may or may not be a good thing.
That's a great point too. Is that if Poeltl could give you those minutes, then you can enter next offseason, which is also going to be a pivotal offseason, and you don't have to worry about the center spot at all, or you have look, I think Jonas Valanciunas is a big part of their long-term plans. Like, I think I'm really high on where he could go from here, and I think they are as well. But he's also going to be on wait and look at his contract at the end of this summer. If the Raptors ever decided to trade him and move on from him, because Poeltl pushes them, or because they decide to re-sign Biz this summer or something like that, Valanciunas would have a ton of value on the market. Like, that contract's going to be unreal. But if things play out the way we expect, Valanciunas played 26 minutes a game last year. The fact that he missed games is a concern. You would like a more reliable backup than the Nogueira-Poeltl combination. And Biyombo played 22 minutes a game last year. They basically split it right down the middle. But I think you could play Jonas Valanciunas 32 minutes a game next year, and maybe you play some smaller lineups depending on what power forward you bring in, and then that's what you're hoping for, 10-15 minutes from a backup guy.
Yeah. I mean, one of my biggest concerns with Poeltl, though, is that I thought one of the big successes with the Valanciunas-Biyombo combination was that they offered two different styles,
Yeah.
especially defensively. And, you know, as much as Jonas did make significant improvements, especially throughout the year when he started cutting some weight, defensively, one of the biggest things about Biyombo was that he was so athletic that he was able to show a different look for the defense. And with Poeltl, if he's going to be Jonas's backup, he's going to be offering sort of very similar defensive skills to Jonas.
He has a lot more perimeter mobility. The team thinks he can guard fours, like not the rangiest fours, but they think he could guard some fours if he needs to switch or cross match or whatever. But yeah, it's going to be a tough adjustment no matter who's in that role, because like Biyombo was an unbelievable luxury as far as backup centers go. Like backup centers like him don't exist. It's going to be an adjustment no matter what. Oh yeah, we're going to miss him huge. And we'll talk about, I mean, we've talked about it a ton, but like anyone still holding out hope that Biyombo's coming back, it's pretty unlikely. The only scenario, and this is part of the mega scenario I've talked about, where the Raptors clear out a bunch of cap space with some like real salary cap trickery. So the scenario would be to unload Valanciunas or Ross and Patterson or whatever combination of guys to clear out the room you need, to create trade and you get draft assets back and trade exceptions are created in the process. Then you make the signings that you need to make, whether it's Biyombo, whether it's Batum, or Kevin Durant or whoever, and then you use those trade exceptions that you've created and the picks you just acquired to then fill the roster spots. But that's a ton of dominoes and balls in the air, where like Ujiri would have to have all these things laid out ahead of time and it would have to go off perfectly. But there's like a small like shoot for the moon scenario where maybe Biyombo's back, but I would put the percentages very, very low. Biyombo was around the BioSteel Center on Friday, which was like him and Ujiri were talking. Biyombo's in town for the weekend, but yeah, I don't expect him back. I know some people still want him back and are okay unloading Ross or Valanciunas to keep him, but that's it's probably not realistic.
You're not going to carry four centers.
No.
Yeah. All right. You know what? Let's wrap up on Poeltl with the.
So he's not Bismack Biyombo. Okay.
He's definitely not Bismack Biyombo, but.
But hey, he was the best player on the board, probably. Like I wanted Deontay Davis, but one of the problems with trying to do rankings and trying to get a feel for the draft from outside, like I was at every one of the public draft workouts except the one in Buffalo, which ended up being like no one was there, so it was kind of a private workout anyway.
That was Poeltl versus
Skull with Pascal Siakam in a separate workout.
Oh.
There was a group of 6 that were at that workout. I actually, when we get okay, I'll just do it and we'll transition to Pascal from here. So he thought that he was going to be a part of the Skull Yak workout, and apparently was like disappointed that he wasn't, and took it and like had the attitude that I'm gonna take this out on everyone else in my workout, which is like the best attitude you want a guy to have.
Yeah, for sure.
Ujiri was like very clear that everyone is going to love this guy when they like start talking to him and get to know him and stuff. This being Siakam, not Yak. I mean, Yak seems like a good guy too. Like for a 20-year-old, he has a good handle on the English language. Not surprising he spent 2 years in college ball. But like he has a good sense of humor. Like when he was getting asked about JV and stuff.
Didn't he say he put up buckets against JV?
Okay, so Ujiri said that he reminded them that he scored 27 against Valanciunas in a friendly last summer, which is like that's good. I like that. I like that little bit of swag.
Yo, that was on JV and Domantas Sabonis.
Although Sabonis ate his lunch in the
tournament, yeah. With Poeltl also, the funny thing is the last time he tweeted was #NBA vote DeMar DeRozan.
Really?
Yeah, it was like you go to his Twitter page, it's like congratulations, like I've joined the Toronto Raptors, and then it's nothing for 6 months, and then he voted for DeMar. I don't know if he like just removed all his tweets selectively, but
he said that he watched a lot
true,
of
that's
Raptors
amazing.
because of DeLon. Like if anyone doesn't know, I mean, I feel like it's been covered well off, but DeLon Wright and Jakob Poeltl were teammates at Utah when Wright was a senior and Poeltl was a freshman. And the nice thing about that team that year, not only did the Raptors like get to know him pretty well from scouting DeLon and like having DeLon in house to not advise but like fill them in on the guy. Utah also runs like a very pro-style team. They ice a lot of pick and rolls defensively. They're a very pick and roll heavy offense. So when we talked about DeLon Wright and he was getting called, as far as point guards go, closer to NBA ready, it's a lot of that was based on the system that they play at Utah. So that's encouraging too. And Poeltl was saying that they changed coverages a lot in the 2 years that he was there. They tried a lot of different, they threw a lot of different defensive schemes out there. So he's played a couple different styles. So he should be, he'll probably be comfortable. We don't know what the Raptors defense is going to look like next year. With Andy Greer gone now, they haven't really decided who the new defensive coordinator is going to be. But, yeah. All right. Anything else on Big Yak?
Yeah, just one more super lazy NBA comp. Yeah. Give me his NBA comp, because I threw out like Robin Lopez.
Robin Lopez isn't bad. Yeah, like I guess that's good. I don't know if he'll be the post defender that Robin Lopez is, but like in terms of the mobility and like I don't know, I really like Robin Lopez.
Robin Lopez is great.
I think he has more ball skill. Like he'll eventually have more ball skill,
true.
But I'm not sure if. I know his defensive potential is there, but like Robin Lopez for a little while there was pretty underrated defensively. Like the ability to roam the perimeter a little bit and protect the rim. You hope he gets there for sure. That's not a bad one. I don't know. I hate player comps so much.
Okay, fair.
I
was really hoping you would say something like Timofey Mozgov, and I would be like, wow, that's racist.
Yeah, that's racist. No. That's one that I've heard out there.
Mozgov, yeah.
We can get into them for Pascal too, because I've heard some good ones about him.
Oh, okay. Well, let's talk about Pascal. Yeah.
Siakam's razor. Cameron. This is hot. Killa Khan. Okay, so he wasn't at the media availability on Friday because he's on a student visa at New Mexico State. He's originally from Cameroon. I think there were visa complications about getting him to Toronto, and then, or maybe about getting him to Toronto and then getting him to Vegas for Summer League. So we're not sure when we're going to see him for the first time and get to meet him. Ujiri, so basically a reporter basically said to Ujiri at the media availability, he's like, he didn't even ask a question. He was just like, wow, I'm so impressed that like Yak speaks English and is like, I can have a conversation. And it was super awkward, but Ujiri basically pivoted later to, if you think this kid like has a sense of humor and is likable, wait until you meet Pascal Siakam. And you compare that with his backstory. There was a great piece up before the draft on NBA.com about how Siakam has three brothers. All three of his brothers were 6'7". His dad's dream was for one of the sons to make it to the NBA. And Pascal didn't like basketball originally all that much. He just kind of played it just because. But then he met like Serge Ibaka and a couple other guys at a Basketball Without Borders camp and just fell in love with the sport from there and decided, hey, like this is my thing. I'm gonna use this opportunity, and he's fallen in love with it from there. You combine that story with the personality with by the way, this is a sad part of it. His father died 2 years back, so
right.
He actually, because he was at college at the time, he didn't even go home for the funeral because his family decided that like it would have been more important to his father that he continue on this path to the NBA. So it's awesome that he got there. Like it's such a great story.
Definitely.
And anyway, so you combine that backstory with the personality, with the fact that he is like an all-out balls to the wall energy player. Like the first thing he brings to the table is energy. People wanted Skull or Deontay Davis with that pick, and it's going to kill me when Patrick McCaw is killing it for the Golden State Warriors the next 2 years because he was a guy I really liked there. But it sounds like if this guy is anywhere close to as good as the team thinks he is, he's going to be a fan favorite based on personality and energy. So, you ready for an all-out, like, physical, run-around, try to do everything guy deep off the bench at power forward?
Definitely, man. Look, if anything, the Raptors' current core with the 3 stars put in place of Lowry, DeRozan, and Valanciunas, it forces you to play it's shown over time that it's very effective if they play with a very active, very energetic, and hopefully a power forward that can space the floor.
Yeah, I don't know if I'm there yet with him. His jump shot needs some work, like mechanically, it's not great. He did, he flashed like 15 to 17 foot range at New Mexico State. And the team has for the last couple of years not valued shooting all that highly in the draft, just because like that you look at Norman Powell's jump shot from college and it was like, okay, his release is a little long and he jumps too high. You looked at DeLon Wright, it's like, okay, the jumper itself isn't bad, but the gather off the dribble needs tightening up. You look at Siakam and it's just like mechanically it's super inconsistent, which makes sense because he's been playing organized basketball for like 2 years. So like of course he's not going to have like some of the refined skills. So if the Raptors are confident in their ability to help guys improve in that area. So I don't know if you pencil him in as a stretch for long term, but like the fact that he already has a mid-range game, and like can not only a mid-range like catch and shoot game, but like he's got some ball skill too. Like maybe a little herky jerky or like a little out of control, but he's gonna get lots of time with the 905 too to bring those skills along. So
yeah, definitely. Okay, so what give me a scouting profile in terms of what skills he should be able to bring. Maybe in just his first year, but also maybe going forward.
In his first year, I'm honestly not expecting much more than like maybe he comes in and gives you some energy off the bench, like
injury replacement.
Yeah,
kind of
like
guy.
I don't think I think he's penciled in as the third string power forward. Like I don't think he's pushing for minutes right out of the gate. I think he'll be in a position to start the year like Norman Powell and DeLon Wright were last year, where like you're going down to the D League pretty regularly, getting called up so you get that NBA experience and you're around the team, but you're probably only playing garbage time or energy minutes unless an injury strikes, which is fine because even though he's 22, you know, a 22-year-old who only has 2 years of playing basketball regularly on his track record still has some potential. Longer term, the thing that stands out obviously is that he has an equal wingspan to Yak with a higher standing reach. So like even though he's only 6'9", he's got a 7'3" wingspan, nearly a 9-foot standing reach. So you want to talk about the typical Masai Ujiri draft pick in terms of length and motor and physicality. He could probably stand to put on some weight. He's only about 225, 230, and even that's like 40 pounds more than he was 3 years ago. So he could. I honestly I think he's most intriguing if they think he can spot in at center a little bit long term. He'll need to add some size to that or like some bulk for that, but he has like in terms of length and reach, he could definitely do that. He's pretty mobile on the perimeter. It's tough to get a feel for what his individual defense would be like because New Mexico State played a zone almost all the time. So like we talk about sometimes how Syracuse guys are tough to project defensively, like Malachi Richardson, because they play a lot of zone. Well, Siakam played a ton of zone too, so he has a good block rate and like a mediocre steal rate. But sorry, not mediocre, but like it doesn't stand out. And he has a good block rate. He blocked 2.2 shots per game. But we really don't know, and there's limited video because he played in the WAC. Like the only game I could find a torrent was that game where he ate Rico Gather's lunch against Baylor, which was an awesome showing. If you can find that game, I suggest watching it. Siakam had something like 26 and 10, and it was the best competition he played all year. But other than that, it's tough to get a real feel for how his individual defense will translate. But obviously the tools are all there. He's got a high motor, which is, you know, it's a cliche that gets thrown around at draft time, but is something the team was talking about a ton. They really like how much energy he plays with and how hard he tries. He's got the length and like the lateral quickness to be a good defender. And then there's upside there because he hasn't been playing all that long. I know you did a quick scouting report on him too. That piece you wrote on Friday was great, by the way. Remind me to throw the link to that in the post. What do you see from Siakam?
Well, I think one of the biggest things is you look at him and you say he's 22 years old. Well, he's 22 years
Allegedly.
old. But, wow.
Look, I only make that joke because someone made that joke about him and Biombo yesterday, and Masai laughed at it. So, oh no, the joke was actually about Serge Ibaka.
No. Yeah, good luck with signing Serge Ibaka to a max contract next year. Whichever team does, which I'm a little bit afraid it might be the Raptors. But
same age as Kyle Lowry.
Oh, man. So, yeah, Siakam's 22, which sort of suggests that he might not have that much potential left as compared to someone like who's 19, like Scal, or 20, like Scal. But, like you said, he only started playing organized basketball 3 years ago, and I like that he's taking significant leaps, just in his first and second year at New Mexico State. in relatively the same amount of minutes, he was able to sort of expand his offensive responsibilities. That came with a slight drop off in efficiency in terms of scoring, but you kind of expect that. And a lot of that is just him stepping out to the perimeter, trying more jumpers. I like the initiative there. Every time you watch video on this guy, it's just he's insanely active, especially defensively. I definitely like his mobility, man. His max vertical is 37 inches, which is really good for someone with his wingspan and his size. And actually, I don't even know if I necessarily want him to put on more weight, because I kind of like the fact that right now he's very mobile. He might not be necessarily fully comfortable with guarding in the perimeter right now, but I would say there are like maybe 20 bigs in the league right now that are fully capable and comfortable of guarding people on switches on the perimeter and stuff. But that's become a vital skill for bigs, especially if you want to sort of carry yourself as a defensive big. And the fact that he has block shots, and that he's mobile enough to hedge the perimeter, that's a very good basis for a valuable defender there. So, yeah, I mean, I want to see him sort of develop more offensive skills. Hopefully, if he can stretch the floor, then wow, you've got a really nice player. But again, late in the draft, I think this is this fills a need for the roster long term. I really do see him slotting in maybe like 2-3 years from now. Maybe potentially as the starting power forward. But
here's the thing too. Even if he doesn't become the starting power forward, if you have an energy guy, say he winds up playing 10 minutes a game off the bench 2 years from now, at the number 27 pick, that's fine. I think the only problem people really have is that, like, one, they didn't know who this guy was, so like it was almost Bruno-esque. Even though Siakam was like, I had him 45th, which I think was like the second highest that I saw him ranked. But most people had him firmly in the second round somewhere. But also, it's like if Skal and Deontay Davis hadn't slid in the draft, I think people would have responded to this pick a little better. Do you think that's fair?
Yeah, that's fair. I mean, those are the guys, again, that you're most familiar with. And I feel like, I mean, I don't know. I thought those guys were higher upside guys. And I guess based on those guys, their size, like Davis and Labissiere, like those guys have more physical size to work with. So I guess technically they do have more potential. But, like, this is one of those things where, like, even though he's 22, I really do think there's more potential here than what that age might suggest.
By the way, I don't know.
I like this pick a lot, actually.
I finished my point about Davis earlier. The point I was trying to make about ranking from the outside was that, like, all that I have to go off of, the Raptors didn't work Davis out, so all I have to go off of is, video work and then what other people say about him. So, like, I have the chance to interview guys and talk to guys, not as media, but as a team, is such a huge part of the process. And, like, especially for the Raptors who value, like, organizational cultural fit more than most any other team. So, like, when Skal and Deontay Davis slip on draft night, everyone's like, what the heck? But, like, I think that's kind of a good reminder that, like, we first of all, we hear what agents and teams want us to hear. And then, we're only privy to a part of the process. So, I rank those guys high, and I like them in the mix at number 9 even. So when they were there at 27, I get it that people are disappointed for not swinging for the fences. But, like, Deontay Davis got passed over 30 times. So
yeah, that's got to tell you something about a
player. Hashtag prove them.
Hashtag prove
Hashtag they.
Man, he's definitely a... Deontay Davis, the first time he sees Georgios Papagiannis, it's going to dominate Papagiannis. Oh, yeah. I'm sweating.
Oh, boy.
Or Gershon Yabusele. Those guys were actually the whose man's is this.
Gershon. I actually really like Gershon. Like, if the Raptors were going to draft and stash a guy, I had it pretty high on my list.
French Draymond?
Yeah, I don't know about that. That dude is, like, he is huge, though.
I thought it said he was 280. And 6'8", which is kind of incredible.
I don't know about 280, but like when he did the dunking drill at the end of the Raptors workout that like I wrote about before, where like you duck down to one block, grab a ball, dunk it, go to the other block, pick it out, and you do that 10 times and they time it. Like watching a guy that size do that drill was hilarious. Like especially comparing him to like Diamond Stone, who's a little taller and is like a really solidly built guy, but like is down 20 or 30 pounds compared to Gershon. It was pretty funny. Okay, let's draft in general.
Yeah.
Are you surprised that they took two guys that figure to be on the roster next year?
A little bit surprised.
Me too.
I think it is there's a bit of a win now factor that goes into it. I'm not saying that this is entirely the reason why they did it, but I do think that does factor in, especially with a pick like Poeltl. Again, he was the best player on the board at 9. Maybe not the most upside, but definitely the highest floor, and that does matter. And if you can have him slot in as the backup power forward even in his first year, but especially going forward the next 3 years, maybe then you can solve your entire center not problem, but like you have center locked down for about 17-18 million for the next 3 years, and that frees up assets to go elsewhere. I mean, if you don't have a decent backup center, that's a really big problem. Like you said, Jonas has had injuries the last 2 years. Again, those are both freak injuries with his hand, but you still need a solid backup center, and those aren't cheap, man. I mean, like,
here's the other thing: it's tough to keep 6 young guys on the roster. But you look at have 6 guys on this roster that are on their rookie scale deals, or like including Powell, who's on a second-round pick minimum deal the next 2 years. Those 6 guys fill up 6 roster spots, and combined right now, they are projected to take up 10.5% of the salary cap only. So that means 89.5% of your salary cap is going to your top 9 players. So like it's almost like in fantasy sports when people go stars and scrubs, and you spend big on a couple guys in auction, and then have a bunch of $1 guys fill out your roster.
This is exactly that.
Like I think the Raptors ended up uncomfortable with having 5 development guys on the team last year at the start, and that's why they moved on from Anthony Bennett eventually. But I think you can look at Norman Powell and Lucas Nogueira and consider those guys kind of graduated from the D-League program. And if not for Nogueira, then maybe he's out anyway because they'll need center depth. But yeah, it's it's risky and it's weird to be like, yeah, we're in win now, so we're gonna fill the roster with these 5 young guys instead of veteran minimums or whatever. But one, the market is probably not gonna play out where you're gonna get very many veterans cheap anyway. And 2, this keeps the team in good shape long term and short term, where none of these guys are stars, but say DeRozan left and then Kyle Lowry demanded a trade. Like this is not something I think is going to happen at all. I think DeRozan's back. I don't think Lowry would ever demand a trade. Say it happens though, and the Raptors quickly need to pivot to a rebuilding scenario. Well, you have Valanciunas and Ross then on decent deals. You have Corey Joseph on a great contract, and you have 5 or 6 young guys where you're in a position where if you needed to turn the corner and push the timeline back 2 or 3 years, you have young pieces in place already, and if those young pieces can contribute at the back end of your rotation and give you cheap labor, even better. So, it might not work out perfectly and it may be too much to expect from these guys. But from like an asset management standpoint and from we want to win now while also making sure we're set up for a couple years down the line, it makes sense as long as, the player development system keeps working out and the Raptors don't get absolutely crushed with injuries at any point.
Yeah, look, this could work out great. In terms of, you could address 2 problems. Like, it could address a short-term need for a center without paying like an exorbitant amount. And seriously, we're going to see how much Bismack gets paid. It's just not financially prudent for the Raptors to keep him.
You're going to see how much Kevin Seraphin gets paid.
And you're going to see how much Hassan Whiteside gets paid, and then immediately turns into Andrew Bynum 2.0. He should dye his hair blonde. He should just make that clear. He said the other day that he was a businessman that plays basketball.
Yeah, okay.
He's not a businessman. He's a
businessman.
Businessman. But yeah, and also it could, there is still some upside, especially with Siakam. I like Siakam's upside. Poeltl, I don't know. I mean, I like his upside as a starting center in this league eventually, but it's just combined with Jonas being here. I don't think his upside is going to be a starter anytime soon. But that's one of the luxuries when you are a 56-win team, is just that it's not that easy to A, crack the rotation, and B, become a meaningful player in that rotation. So.
Okay, let's quickly talk free agency. Because we want to keep this to half an hour and we're at 40 minutes already. So the draft was, I feel a lot better after the draft about the draft now than I did Thursday night. And I wasn't even down on it Thursday night. I was just like a little disappointed, but also part of that is just like ego.
We almost got Chris.
Yeah. Yeah, well,
that would have been amazing.
Balin Brown. He's gonna be.
Okay.
It's gonna suck when he's just crushing the Raptors for the next 2 decades. I think he's gonna be really good. Anyway. Okay, so part of the reason that the draft on draft night was a little meh was that I think part of it was ego, that just like that's not the strategy that I thought they were going to take or that I would have taken. I don't think so.
Right.
Oh, and again, this is without getting to know the players as intimately as an NBA team gets to. And I watch some video, but I don't have a full scouting staff, and I don't get to interview players and stuff in that kind of a setting. So we only know so much. I'm an idiot, is what I'm saying.
Most
although
of us are
not
idiots,
that I had
really.
I had Poeltl 12th, I think, which is not a stretch at all at 9. I had him in the tier where he'd be in the mix at 9. And then again, Siakam, I didn't have him at 27, but I had him higher than almost anyone else. So at least they're names that I like. At least they're names I like. At least they didn't draft Henry Ellenson.
At least, they got Henry Ellenson light.
By the way, I was so down on Ellenson, and it just figures that he landed in the perfect spot for himself, where with
the Pistons.
if he's gonna be good at all, that's the place he's gonna be good. So
seriously, he could play some backup center there,
I'll
and
be pro on that one, maybe. That Big Gundy magic. Okay, so
see that was supposed to be Money Eunice.
Yeah. Who that's a free agent name guys like, but without getting access to that back information, I don't know. That scares me.
That's
man.
true.
A young big man who's already having persistent back issues. Yeah. Anyway, free agency. If you assume DeMar DeRozan is back,
he's back, baby.
The Raptors have 13 roster spots spoken for.
Yeah, I guess
you
put it
include
like that. Yeah, that's true.
the 2 rookies. They have 10 guys under contract. The 2 rookies will now have a cap hold on the books at 100% of their scale. They'll eventually sign for more than that, but for the purposes of keeping a little bit of extra cap space, you probably won't see these rookies signed until the offseason moves are made. There are obviously scenarios where the Raptors could send players out to create cap space or to open up roster spots, but right now what it looks like is if they renounce the rights to James Johnson, Luis Scola, Bismack Biyombo, Jason Thompson, and Nando De Colo, the Raptors would have 10 players under contract, the 2 picks, and DeMar DeRozan's cap hold, and they would have $5.8 million in cap room based on the most recent projections. So they have roughly, whether or not they end up going under the cap, they have roughly the mid-level exception to spend, because they'd have the mid-level roughly the mid-level in terms of cap room, or if they don't go under the cap because they don't renounce rights or whatever, or they re-sign DeRozan first, then they have the mid-level exception, which is roughly that amount anyway. So, and then they have the biannual exception, which lets you offer double the minimum for a guy on a 1 or 2 year deal, and then they have the minimum exceptions, and then there is the trade route. So it's going to be pretty quiet for the Raptors, other than re-signing DeRozan, right? Or
yep. No, they're going to re-sign DeRozan.
No.
Let's make this clear.
DeRozan. But we say it's quiet, or does Masai just have some crazy stuff planned?
You mean crazy stuff like trading Jonas for Boogie?
Trading Jonas for Boogie, trading Ross to clear the space to sign Batum, and then re-signing DeRozan. And to be clear, they need to unload more than just Terrence Ross to do that. But there are fun, wild scenarios we could concoct.
Yeah, I think unrealistic. I think most of them are unrealistic, which is not a stretch to say. But
are you annoyed at all when you look at there's no one to point the blame at for this other than the success of the NBA. But looking at how much cap space there is on the market, how weak a free agent class it is, the Raptors situation, and just I'm at a point where the Raptors have the mid-level exception and they might be able to carve out a little bit of room. Then you look at the free agent class and how much money everyone has. I have no idea what players may be willing to take the mid-level exception.
Yeah, but also, look, this is not a great free agency class.
No, I would love Marvin Williams or Jared Dudley, for example. But I don't think those guys, I think those guys are going to get more than the mid-level exception because those guys are, up there on the power forward free agent ranking.
Yeah, plus they haven't really made that much money in their respective careers.
Those
they're going to take the big payday when it comes.
Those guys might get 8 figures.
Jared Dudley, I think, for sure. Someone's going to pay Jared Dudley $10 million a year.
Someone should
he
pay
can play
Marvin
small ball
Williams
power forward.
$10 million a year.
The same amount.
Marvin Williams coming off a deal where he made $7 million, and that was a pretty reasonable deal. If he wants to, he's going to cash in.
Yeah. If you're a team looking to pay Harrison Barnes $25 million next year, or whatever, $22 million, stop right there. Pay half for Marvin Williams instead.
Or
the same player.
If you're about to pay Harrison Barnes $20+ million, stop right there and pay
Log off.
Harrison Barnes half that amount in terms of a trade for Terrence Ross.
Exactly, guys. Okay, Terrence Ross can't play power forward, nominal power forward like Harrison Barnes can, but Harrison Barnes cannot shoot like Terrence Ross can.
Look, Harrison Barnes is a better, more complete player than Terrence Ross, and a more consistent defender. And yes, that ability to play the four was really important to Golden State and would be really important to a lot of teams. But I'm mostly being a troll with my tweets about Ross and Barnes and my comments here. But if you go and look at and just compare the numbers without the context or without like actually watching, their numbers are strikingly similar. And I've been kind of dying on the hill lately because everyone wants to get rid of Ross for nothing. That like I think Ross has not underrated, but like I don't think people realize what that $10 million a year is going to look like come August. Like that Terrence Ross extension that everyone was like, oh my god about, is going to be slightly below market, I think. Yeah,
you've got a young shooter. I wouldn't say one of the best 3-point shooters, but like definitely in the top 10%.
Like a 38-39% 3-point shooter. Like you can pencil him in
with like 5 threes a game. That's amazing. Yeah. That's a really important skill. And yeah, obviously his flaws as a player. And I don't quite particularly like watching Terrence Ross anymore. It's just too much of an emotional burden for me. But this is still a valuable asset. You can't just throw it away. I think the idea is you throw Ross away, then you can do some other stuff. But really, what are you really going to do with like $15 million in cap room? Like that's not great.
Yeah, and that's the thing. It's like you can concoct scenarios where like unloading Ross would not be difficult at all this summer. If you have a scenario where you need to unload Ross, if you're one of those people who really wants to re-sign Biz at any cost and you're okay, paying a lot of money for a center crew, you could unload Ross no problem. Teams are going to take Terrence Ross at $10 million a year. As crazy as that sounds from our perspective, it wouldn't be tough to unload him. But if you're unloading him with the purpose of creating cap space to dip into the free agent market, you better be certain you're getting your target, because Mo Harkless is going to get $10 million this offseason. Like Kent Bazemore is going to get $15 million this offseason. Evan Fournier might get like $20 million this offseason.
Dude, Kent's going to get paid ways more than what he was before. Putting that bad pun aside.
I should have made a
Marco Bellinelli cost a first-round pick, man. Marco Bellinelli, and he shot like 30% from the field last year.
Yeah.
So, yeah, you can get something for Ross for sure. But, honestly, moving Ross brings about other problems. Raptors do need 3-point shooting, man. Like, look at this roster. It kind of lacks shooters. And Ross's plus-minus numbers are a little bit inflated, but at the same time, it does show, like, yes, the Raptors, the more shooters, like basically every other team on earth, if you put more shooters on the floor, the better at least the offense gets. So,
and the Raptors don't
Ross
have
is
a lot of
important for that.
shooting.
Exactly. Ross is the Raptors' best shooter. Period. Like, maybe Lowry, but we've seen Lowry come and go a little bit. Ross is probably their best shooter. Almost definitely.
Yeah. Okay, well, this draft podcast turned into the pump Terrence Ross's... Let's try to inflate Terrence Ross's trade value on this podcast. Look, I'm...
Rival GMs, if you're listening.
Yeah,
Terrence Ross dropped 51 points one time.
So I don't know. The Ross thing is, like, it comes up so often, and, like, every mailbag I've done, like, the entire season, there are at least, like, 3 questions that involve trading Terrence Ross.
Hey, Blake. Yeah. How much do you think Ross, the 9th pick, and the 27th pick will fetch you?
Yeah, well, apparently somewhere between Serge Ibaka and Marco Bellinelli.
So like George Hill, for example. Yeah. Man, that George Hill deal.
The thing, I know people looked at that and were like, oh, look at what these pick numbers are getting. A big thing with a lot of those deals, though, Ibaka aside, was George Hill, Marco Bellinelli, and Thad Young. Those teams were also able to take on salary without sending any back, which is something the Raptors couldn't offer a team. So those teams were offering that pick plus cap space, which is valuable, or maybe it won't be. Like if you're gonna use that cap space, like I don't know, maxing out Harrison Barnes, for example, maybe you're better off keeping the pick.
Yeah. All right, let's end up on Durant.
Okay.
So, rumor came out last night about 11:45 p.m. Stein first had that Durant was going to set up meetings with the who was it? The Spurs, the Warriors, and the Thunder. And then Woj came out with a piece like 10 minutes later, and apparently he added like the Celtics and the Clippers to that list. And the Heat, right. And there's like another 5 additional teams. You know, like the Rockets, the Mavericks.
Those are teams that don't have meetings set but are hoping to get meetings.
Yeah, those are the scrubs teams, you know. And Durant doesn't want no scrubs. Durant wants to compete immediately. And obviously, and that's reflected in the top 3 selections he had. Maybe not Boston, but whatever. But yeah, the Raptors not on the top 11, huh? That's not great.
Well, you know what? Look, apparently Bruce Arthur had in a column at the end of the year that 2 years ago Durant's people told Toronto that like he wasn't going to come here.
That was 2 years ago, man. Drake's blown up since.
Well, this is the thing. The Raptors have, whether we like it or not, put aside the Toronto disadvantage, which I think is like mostly disappeared because everyone realizes how fucking dope this city is and like that the weather is not really that bad.
Thank Drake for that. Seriously, guys.
And the All-Star game.
Stop blaming Drake for not tweeting out hashtag NBA vote for Kyle Lowry or whatever, man.
Yeah,
he does a lot more.
Yeah. I think the perception of Toronto has dramatically changed as like a sports city over the last couple of years. But I think the important thing too is that whether we like it or not, the Raptors have a history of losing and like not being a strong organization, and that's very much changing now. And the fact that LaMarcus Aldridge gave them a meeting last year is huge. But you can't expect to be, the Spurs and the Warriors and the Thunder. Like the Thunder are the incumbents. The Spurs and Warriors are two of the best teams in the entire NBA, and then the Heat have Pat Riley, Dwayne Wade, and Miami. And
no state tax.
Yeah, and no state income tax, which is like such a thing that
it's massive.
There are rumblings that like the NBA wants to find a way to balance that out a little bit. So the Raptors have some disadvantages, but the big thing is that it takes time, man. Kevin Durant is the biggest star on the free agent market if you assume LeBron James is going back where he is, and he's one of the top 3 players in the entire NBA. Like, yeah, it would be great if the Raptors could get a meeting, and it would be a nice look for the franchise to just like if Durant took that meeting, but it's not realistic for Durant to come here, and we've got to be patient a little bit. Masai Ujiri has done wonders in terms of improving the organizational equity that the Raptors have. Drake's had a hand in that. The team winning has had probably the biggest hand in that. The All-Star game was huge. Maybe it's going to happen eventually, but like the Raptors, I know we've gotten response on Twitter that says, well, they don't have cap space anyway. The Raptors could get the cap space to sign Kevin Durant if just
of course.
It would thin the roster out, but you do that in a second for Kevin Durant. But it takes a little bit of time, and Toronto has a couple of disadvantages, but the biggest one is just that they're not in that spot this summer. If a guy like that is on the market next summer and the Raptors have a little bit more cap flexibility and they've had another season where they're really successful as a team and, Masai Ujiri gets another summer to, like, become everyone's favorite GM around the league, the Raptors are on the right path. So don't get too upset about Kevin Durant not taking a meeting yet because the Raptors, that's where the Raptors are right now. The fact that people can get mad about not getting a meeting with Kevin Durant now compared to like 2 years ago where everyone was just like half joking about like maybe Gravis Vasquez can help us get a meeting with Kevin Durant. Like the organization has come so far. So just keep the faith and like long term the Raptors are definitely trending in the right direction for this kind of stuff.
Yeah, I got 2 things on this. One, it's like a walk, crawl, run situation, man, or crawl, walk, run situation. But
crawl before you ball?
You definitely got to crawl before you ball. Jamal Crawford. Wow. Yeah. So look, years ago it was very difficult for the Raptors to even keep their own free agents, and now it's become like a foregone conclusion that we're just going to re-sign DeMar DeRozan. So much as long as the Raptors offer the money, he will come back, and that's not been sort of an assumption. In years past, we've kept Lowry. The team's probably going to keep DeMar DeRozan. And that's already a significant step. The Raptors have attracted some free agents. Obviously not the marquee ones. But, yeah, for the reasons you mentioned, that's not something that's going to immediately happen. But, look, I'm also not convinced that Masai Ujiri, being as persistent as he is not going to get an audience with Kevin Durant. Maybe it won't be, in the studios of Rock Nation, whether it's in New York or Los Angeles. It's the location has not yet been determined for Kevin Durant's free agency meetings. But, if Kevin Durant comes out of his hotel at like 11:30 in the evening and he's hoping to get some late dinner, I'm sure randomly, just coincidentally, Masai Ujiri is going to be there. Okay? All right, he's going to be there with a to-go plate trying to tell him about, whatever Toronto has to offer, everything Toronto has to offer. Look, if you want to join a team, if he wants to join a better team, maybe join the Raptors, because the Raptors won one more game than the Thunder last year.
And they both ended in the same, and Oklahoma City only won one more game in the playoffs.
And that was with Durant, right? So look, I'm not even kidding. Look, the Raptors with Durant would challenge the Cleveland Cavaliers.
Absolutely, they would.
And would probably go. There's like a 50% chance the Raptors go to the finals with Durant. So like that's a pretty good place to start. Like, don't go to Boston. Like, what are you really gonna do in Boston? Seriously, what's that team gonna do? You, Jaylen Brown, some point guards that can't shoot. Like, that's nothing.
Kevin Durant's the point guard.
Yeah, well, he's already got turnover issues, so I'm sure making him full-time point guard. I'm just joking, Kevin. You don't have point guard. You don't have turnover issues.
We're trying to lure him on this podcast. You're taking shots at him.
I'm just saying. Look, if you play with the Raptors,
we
will go to the finals.
If you play with the Raptors, we'll stop taking shots at you.
Definitely. All right. It's a threat, like a Jay-Z song.
Will, I don't want to crush you here, but Canada is hammering China right now in the senior men's national team tune-up.
Oh, that's playing right now?
46-31 at the half. Brady Heslip with 19 points. Sign him.
Brady Heslip, bring up my guy Chi. What about Joe Chi? Is Joe Chi playing?
I have no idea. E is playing though.
Yo, Yi is good, man. Yi could come back in the NBA right now and drop 40 on a chair.
Yeah.
I don't know about on a defender, on an actual human. He's good, man. He could be a backup power forward. He doesn't want to, though. He's a big star in China now.
Yeah, of course he is.
All right, man. Yeah, and there's another Chinese guy coming in. Wei Lin.
Oh, yeah. Is that guy that went in the second round?
Yeah. It was like 53rd or something. Yeah. Shout out to all the internationals, man. 28 internationals in this draft.
Yeah. That's great.
The Raptors got 2
Canadians?
of them. Yes, it does.
Kitchener, Canada.
Kitchener, Canada. We on the map, man.
Whoa, you're not on the map. Get out of here, man. Trying to cop this 509.
Okay. All right, fine. I'll stay out of it. I'll stay in the 6.
509, 519? 519. Jesus, I don't even know my own area code. Don't do Saturday morning podcasts after a night of drinking.
Look, we're not.
We gotta wrap. We went double the time we said too. We gotta wrap this up.
Yeah.
All right, you got any parting shots? Maybe we'll come back with the Raptors Weekly Extra for Friday, depending on how much free agency rumor there is. But that's also Canada Day, so if we don't talk to you, I guess enjoy your long weekend, everyone. But Will, parting shots?
No, man. I'm excited to see what happens in free agency. I want to see what other teams do. I don't really anticipate that much movement in the Eastern Conference. I don't really see a team that's going to make a significant leap. But
I think Atlanta has the most mobility, upward or downward.
Yeah, but their mobility is they're going to re-sign Al Horford, and that's it.
I like their draft too.
Yeah, look, they got DeMar Carroll 2.0, and that's not even like a race-based comp, but
it's
straight up Torian.
It's a dreads-based comp.
No, man, Torian Prince is really like DeMar Carroll. Okay.
I mean, he's got the quote game down too.
He's got the same size. All he has to do is put on some fancy hats.
Yeah, if he starts dressing like The Undertaker, boom.
Done. All right, it's
future.
Done.
Okay, so my parting shot would be this. Is like, if nothing happens and the Raptors are quiet, that's entirely fine. They won 56 games last year. They have a mostly young roster. Enough that, like, if they don't do much, the internal growth might be enough for them to be in that same kind of level where, like, they're probably winning a first-round series. They could probably be the favorite to make a conference finals run, depending on what everyone else does. It'll be fine. I would also warn, though, that, like, as much as I've written about and talked about how little wiggle room the Raptors have, there are crazy scenarios, and if anyone, like, the Raptors have Bobby Webster, who like was the league's cap guy in their front office. They have Jeff Weltman, who is like a really well-respected assistant GM. They have Masai Ujiri, who is like one of the most creative and aggressive dudes out there. Like the Raptors were chasing Wesley Matthews after they got DeMarre Carroll last year. Like,
oh yeah, they were.
Everything, as much as it's probably going to be boring, and if it is, that's okay. Don't rule anything out. It could be exciting. Basically, cancel all your long weekend plans and sit on Twitter.
What a pitch! It could be exciting.
Yeah. Well, it's better that than like, oh, nothing's going to happen. They don't have cap space, because like stuff might happen. Who knows?
Yeah, and look, the Raptors, as much as they don't have cap flexibility, they have a lot of good players signed to good contracts. So like it's mobile. Like the situation is fluid. So one of the greatest things about Masai Ujiri is that yes, sometimes he sacrifices flexibility in terms of like actual raw cap room, but he makes sure to get players on like good contracts.
Yeah.
Like literally everyone on the Raptors is movable.
What would be the toughest contract to move on the Raptors? DeMarre Carroll?
Yeah. That's only because he's coming off injury.
Yeah, and it's significant. And it's still only got like it's not like it's a huge albatross. It's 3 more years at like 14 to 16 a year.
Yeah, seriously, and a lot of teams definitely could use DeMarre Carroll. Like I'm telling you, if the Thunder had DeMarre Carroll this year instead of Enes Kanter, they could have beaten the.
So
it should have been
Ibaka for DeMarre Carroll.
Well, I don't know. I don't think I would have minded.
I think that would have been like not a bad deal for either side, but.
Yeah, I'm a little bit concerned about Ibaka though. It's not a slam dunk.
Yeah, the paying him like $180 million as a free agent in 2017 is kind of scary. Anyway, let's worry about the 2016 free agent class, which is going to see Kevin Durant come to Toronto, and if not Kevin Durant, Nick Batum come to Toronto. DeRozan gets retained. Poeltl and Siakam are just awesome. Everything's wonderful.
Yo, speaking of everything's wonderful, the Raptors are going to have 2 Team USA guys.
Oh, yeah, that's awesome. And a Team Argentina and a Team Lithuania guy.
Yeah, and maybe Team Canada.
And it got announced today. Probably not Team Canada, if we're being completely honest.
Come on,
I mean, the turnout for that team is not encouraging.
They can do it. Corey Joseph, Tyler Ennis, who I've never even seen play a minute in the NBA.
My boy Melvin Ejim, who's like way better than people realize. Baby.
Yes.
Kem Birch ditched on Summer League to go, but they're a thin team. I don't know. And Team USA added Harrison Barnes, so it's like watching Terrence Ross. Oh boy, I gotta get off that because I'm gonna start catching strays for tweeting that too much. And like whatever team signs Harrison Barnes, I'm gonna get that team's fan base all in my mentions. It's gonna be. Don't
add my boy Blake about Harrison Barnes, okay?
Yo, someone responded to me like with a well actually about when I made that awful Nick Jonas Valanciunas pun. Someone was like, yeah, well, how come the Cavs shot all over them then? I was like, dude, you were responding mad to a Nick Jonas pun. People get mad about anything online, mad and nude.
I'm happy for the city of Cleveland, and I'm definitely very happy for LeBron James that he's immortalized now by this moment. But I'm a lot of the Cavs fan base is garbage.
And Dan Gilbert is the most garbage.
Is the most garbage. So
Sans ass having runaway slave up letter writing, predatory loans giving. Trying hard not to swear right now. I hate Dan Gilbert. I hope LeBron leaves now and says tells the city like, yo, it's Dan Gilbert.
Did you see on NBA Reddit at the Cavaliers championship parade? The one in Cleveland. The guy just straight up ate poo. Like it was like he picked up horse shit off the ground and just ate it.
Okay, and on that note, when the Raptors, when we're coming to you,
congrats to Cleveland.
When we're coming to you.
Still waiting for that one
on this date next year. Talking about what the Raptors did in their parade celebration. Please don't be the guy.
If the Raptors win,
please don't be the
if
guy.
If the Raptors win the championship next year, I will eat poo. All right, I'm putting this on the podcast.
Oh, we should have ended this podcast at least 1 minute earlier. That's it. I'm cutting you off, Will. Thanks for listening, everyone. Depending on how the week goes and how free agency is looking, we'll maybe talk to you Friday morning for the Raptors Weekly Extra Podcast. Thanks for listening. Thanks, Will.
See ya.